Welcome back to Midday Live. We are joined by Dr. Rayner from Western Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks
Good.
for having me, Gabe.
Of course, yeah, no problem. So now we are discussing a new orthopedic robot at Community Hospital. So first, kind of intel, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I guess to start off with, I do mostly hip and knee replacement at Community Hospital. I'm a fellowship trained surgeon who's been at the Mayo Clinic and Dartmouth and now work exclusively at Community Hospital through Western Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, doing mostly knee and hip replacements. And I bring with me some interesting new strategies that help patients get through surgery a little bit quicker and a little more efficiently and a little bit more personalized, I like to think of it. And one of those strategies is bringing in the acquisition of a new robot, and that sounds pretty intense, and I'd like to just dispel a little bit of using a robot in surgery, because a lot of people think that means a robot does your surgery. But the cool thing about this new robot that Community Hospital has is it is an enabling technology that allows me to do very precise surgery, still the same way that I would do before, but in a much more precise and patient-specific manner, which enables patients to move through surgery and their associated recovery much quicker.
So not only is this a really big deal because of what you just mentioned, it's, quicker recovery and things like that, but how close is the nearest robot like this? People on the Western Slope, this is a good thing for them. Can you explain why?
Yeah, so especially on the Western Slope, this is the only robot of its kind. Actually, this was the first one here in Colorado. And so you'd have to go to another state to get a similar robot. There are other robotic technologies out there for knee replacement, but the VELYS robot, which is the specific make of this robot that we've acquired, is kind of what I think of anyway as the latest and greatest that captures some of the technology from previous iterations of a robotic knee replacement and brings them all together in terms of what's best for the patient in terms of their preoperative workup, the intraoperative workflow, and postoperative outcomes.
Absolutely. So luckily, my knees are fine. Never had to have any operations on them. Knock on wood. You did bring us this demonstration. Why don't you show us a little bit of what it can do?
Yeah, I show this to most of my patients, and they find it pretty fascinating because a lot of people come to me very nervous with what a knee replacement actually entails. A lot of people think that knee replacement simply means taking out your entire knee from one end of your thigh bone to the other end of your shin bone, kind of similar to what this would represent, removing this entire thing. But it's much less invasive than that. This is a normal anatomic knee that has good, clean, full thickness cartilage and meniscus underneath that. But as the knee degenerates over time and gets arthritis, which is a degenerative condition, you start to lose some of that cartilage and see some exposed bone and inflammation underneath that. You get meniscus tears associated with that. And the best and only cure that we have for arthritis is knee replacement. But instead of lopping out the entire knee, kind of like you could imagine if we just took this whole thing out and put in a big hunk of metal in somebody's knee, what we actually do, I like to term much more as knee resurfacing, where we remove the arthritic cartilage and that surface there and replace it with this metal surface that articulates on a highly conforming plastic bearing. So now you have metal articulating on plastic rather than arthritic and inflamed bone rubbing on bone.
So does this robot kind of help the procedure itself, make it easier for you, or, kind of, how does that work?
That's a very good question. So some people think that the robot would make your surgery easier or faster, but rather than that, I think of it much more as a precision tool that you have to use with some pretty advanced knowledge of how a knee replacement works in general. Kind of like going from one tack hammer to a framing hammer. If you're in construction, you have a very precise tool made exactly for what you're doing. The robot allows me to have a saw that's positioned exactly where it's supposed to be in space to make a very personalized cut for each patient based on those implants. Whereas historically, as we've been doing knees for decades now, this was done with initially with a saw freehand, and then over years that started to kind of change to some guides that took into account some patient's anatomy, where we were largely putting in knees the exact same way for every single person, and then making their soft tissues balance around that. Now, the saw allows me to make the cuts very personalized, such that it already fits their soft tissue envelope underneath without having to make any soft tissue adjustments to that.
So very precise, we could say.
Very precise is probably the best way to summarize it.
Yeah, and I believe you said this, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only one in the state.
Yes, I think it is fair to say that you can get robotic knees elsewhere. There are other robots, but they're all different iterations. And the newest, latest, and greatest that captures all of that really good technology is only available there.
Awesome. Well, very, very good for the Western Slope. Very, very good for all of us here who, may need something like this in the future. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Of course, awesome demonstration. I think that really puts a really good visual, and somebody like me who has no experience or knowledge of this stuff. Very good.
Awesome. Happy to show it.
Of course. Thank you. We'll be right back.